The Alpha King descended into the dungeon expecting to pass judgment. Chains clinked. A woman knelt in the dark, silent, bleeding, and broken. And in that moment, he realized this punishment was never his order. The stone steps were slick beneath his boots. Damien felt the cold rise from the earth itself, seeping through walls that had witnessed centuries of suffering. He'd walked these steps before countless times to judge traitors, to sentence rogues, to look into the eyes of wolves who'd turned their backs on the pack. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the air tasted wrong. Metallic. Thick with something that made his wolf pace restlessly beneath his skin. The accusations had reached him 3 days ago. An omega. Spreading dissent. Poisoning the minds of the younger wolves. Planting seeds of rebellion that threatened to fracture the very foundation of the Northern Territories. The council had been insistent, furious even. They'd demanded swift justice. Public execution. A message to anyone who dared question the order of things. Damien had agreed to come. To see her. To decide her fate himself. But as he descended deeper into the earth, past the cells that held common criminals, past the holding chambers for rogues awaiting trial, he felt something shift in his chest. A pull. A wrongness that made his teeth ache and his vision sharpen. The torches along the walls flickered as he passed, casting shadows that writhed like living things. The guards who'd accompanied him from the surface had fallen silent 2 levels ago. Even they could feel it, the weight of whatever waited below. The dungeon master met him at the final landing. An older wolf, scarred and weathered, with eyes that had seen too much. He didn't speak. Didn't offer explanation or context. He simply gestured toward a corridor that branched away from the main cells, toward a section Damien had never visited. A place reserved for the most dangerous. The most damned. Damien's jaw tightened. What had this Omega done to warrant such isolation? The corridor narrowed. The walls turned from rough-hewn stone to something older, smoother, carved by hands that predated the pack's written history. Ancient symbols marked the surface, wards meant to contain power. To suppress it. Damien's wolf snarled, recognizing the magic even if he didn't understand it fully. And then he saw the door. Iron. Thick as his forearm. Covered in runes that glowed faintly in the darkness, pulsing with a rhythm that matched his own heartbeat. The dungeon master produced a key old, ornate, wrong, and the lock turned with a sound like breaking bones. The door swung open. The smell hit him first. Blood. Old and new. Beneath it, something sweeter. Something that made every instinct in his body roar to life. His wolf surged forward, demanding control, demanding he act, but Damien forced it down. Forced himself to step inside. Forced his eyes to adjust to the deeper darkness that filled the cell. She was kneeling in the center of the room. Chains wrapped around her wrists, bolted to the floor. More chains circled her throat, her ankles. Silver. He could see the burns where the metal touched her skin, weeping wounds that should have healed but hadn't. Her head was bowed, dark hair falling forward to hide her face. She wore nothing but rags torn, blood-stained, barely clinging to her frame. Her back was exposed. Damien's breath caught. Scars. Hundreds of them. Layered over each other in patterns that spoke of systematic torture. Ritual. Not punishment. Not discipline. This was something else entirely. But it was the marks on her shoulders that made him freeze. Symbols. Carved into her flesh and burned until they became permanent. He recognized them. Ancient pack law. Curse marks. Used only in the oldest rituals, the darkest ceremonies. They were meant to bind. To absorb. To transfer suffering from one vessel to another. His wolf went utterly still. She was a scapegoat. A living sacrifice. Damien's hands curled into fists. He turned to the dungeon master, who'd remained in the doorway. The old wolf's face was carefully blank, but Damien saw the truth in his eyes. He knew. They all knew. How long has she been here? Damien's voice came out low. Dangerous. The dungeon master hesitated. 7 months, Your Majesty. 7 months. While Damien had been managing border disputes. While he'd been traveling to allied territories. While he'd been away from the heart of his own kingdom. 7 months this woman had been chained in the dark, bearing God's new wet. Who ordered this? The questions scraped out of him. The council, sire. They said she was dangerous. That she needed to be contained until you could pass final judgment. Contained. The word was bitter on his tongue. This wasn't containment. This was torture dressed in legal ceremony. Damien stepped further into the cell. His boots echoed on stone slick with moisture or blood, he couldn't tell. The woman didn't move. Didn't acknowledge his presence. For a moment, he wondered if she was even conscious. But then he saw it, the slight rise and fall of her shoulders. The tremor in her hands where they rested against the floor. She was awake. She was aware. She was waiting. Leave us, Damien commanded. The dungeon master opened his mouth to protest, to warn. Damien didn't know and didn't care. The look he shot the old wolf silenced him instantly. The door closed with a hollow boom that seemed to seal them away from the rest of the world. Damien circled slowly, keeping his distance. Not from fear, but because something told him sudden movements would shatter whatever fragile thing kept this woman kneeling instead of collapsed. She was held together by will alone. By something deeper than strength. He stopped in front of her. Close enough to see the way her fingers curled against the stone. Close enough to smell beneath the blood and silver, moonflower and frost. Omega scent. But threaded through it was something else. Something that called to the oldest parts of him. Power. Raw and unchained despite the silver wrapped around her. Look at me, he said. She didn't move. I am your Alpha King. I command you to look at me. Still nothing. But he saw her throat work. Saw her swallow against the silver collar. And then, slowly, painfully, she raised her head. Damien's world tilted. Her eyes met his. Not brown. Not gold. Not any color he'd seen in a wolf's eyes before. Silver. Like moonlight trapped in ice. Like stars dying in a winter sky. They were ancient. Knowing. And utterly, devastatingly empty. She had been hollowed out. Whatever had been done to her in this cell, it had carved away pieces of her until only the framework remained. And yet she knelt there. Still breathing. Still conscious. Still somehow present in a way that made his chest constrict. What is your name? His voice came out softer than he intended. Her lips parted. Cracked and dry. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Rusted from disuse. Marin. Marin. The name settled into him like a brand. Marin, he repeated, tasting it. Do you know who I am? Something flickered in those silver eyes. Recognition. Or perhaps resignation. You're the one they've been waiting for. The one who will finally end this. End this. She thought he'd come to kill her. Damien crouched down, bringing himself to her level. The movement made the chains clink, her chains, not his, and he saw her flinch. Just barely. Just enough. I'm going to ask you questions, he said carefully. And you're going to answer them truthfully. Do you understand? She nodded. Once. Mechanical. Are you a traitor to this pack? No. The answer came without hesitation. Without fear. Just flat certainty. Did you spread dissent among the younger wolves? No. Did you plot to undermine my authority? No. Then why are you here, Marin? The question came out rougher than he intended. Why would my council lock you away like this if you've done nothing wrong? For the first time, something broke through the emptiness in her eyes. Something that might have been pain. Or anger. Or both. Because, she whispered, someone had to bear it. Before he could ask what she meant, she swayed. Just slightly. But enough that the chains pulled taut and she gasped, a sound of pure agony that cut through him like claws. Damien reached out instinctively, catching her before she could collapse fully. His hands touched her shoulders, pressed against those terrible scars, and the moment his skin met hers, the world exploded. Light. Blinding and silver. Power surged through the connection between them, wild and desperate and ancient. He saw, felt, fragments of memory that weren't his. A circle of wolves chanting. A blade dripping black. Pain layered upon pain as curse after curse was carved into flesh meant to hold them. She was a vessel. A container. Taking on the pack's darkness so they could remain pure. Taking on their sickness so they could stay strong. Damien ripped his hands away, stumbling back. His heart hammered against his ribs. His wolf howled inside him, fury and protection, and something else he didn't have words for. Marin had caught herself on her chains. She was shaking now, trembling so violently the silver rattled. But she didn't cry, didn't beg. She just knelt there, waiting for whatever came next. And Damien understood. This punishment was never his order. But the question that burned through him now, the question that made his claws extend and his vision bleed red, was far more dangerous. If he hadn't ordered this, then who had? And what exactly had they been trying to hide? If you're already hooked, if you need to know what happens when an alpha king realizes his own counsel has been playing him, then subscribe to Shayla's Romance Library. Because this story? It's only just beginning. Damien straightened slowly, forcing his breathing to steady. Forcing his wolf to retreat before it did something irreversible. The rage simmering beneath his skin wanted release, wanted to tear back up those stairs and rip answers from every council member's throat. But that would come later. Right now, there was a woman chained to his dungeon floor who'd been tortured in his name. Under his roof. While he'd been blind to it all. That ended now. He moved to the wall where the chains were anchored, examining the mechanism. Complex. Deliberate. Designed not just to hold but to hurt. The silver was woven with iron and something else, something that made his skin crawl when he got too close. Dark magic. Old pack curses that had been forbidden for generations. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to keep Marin contained. Which meant they feared what she could do if she were free. These chains, he said, his voice carefully controlled. How often do they move you? Feed you? Marin's answer came after a long pause, as if she had to drag the words up from somewhere deep. They don't move me. Food comes once every 3 days. Water twice a day. Once every 3 days. For 7 months. Damien's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. She should be dead. Any normal wolf would be dead. But she was still here, still conscious, still somehow holding herself together despite conditions designed to break her. Who comes down here? He kept his tone neutral, but his mind was already cataloging names. Already building a list. Different guards. They don't speak to me. There's a healer. Once a week. Her voice remained flat, detached. As if she were describing someone else's suffering. Not to heal. To make sure I'm still alive. Still. Functional. Functional. The word made his stomach turn. They'd been keeping her alive just enough to continue using her. To continue whatever ritual they'd trapped her in. Damien returned to where she knelt, crouching down again. This time he was more careful. More aware of what touching her might trigger. Marin. Look at me again. She lifted those devastating silver eyes. Up close, he could see the exhaustion carved into every line of her face. The way her skin had gone translucent from lack of sunlight. The hollow beneath her cheekbones that spoke of slow starvation. And yet beneath it all, beneath the damage and the pain, there was something unbroken. Some core of her that remained untouched. I'm going to get you out of these chains, he said quietly. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that? A bitter sound escaped her, not quite a laugh, not quite a sob. Trust. She said the word like it was foreign. Like she'd forgotten what it meant. I don't know that word anymore, Alpha King. Damien, he corrected. My name is Damien. Names don't matter down here. But her eyes held his, searching. Looking for something. You'll just put me in a different cell. A cleaner one, maybe. But still a cell. No, the certainty in his own voice surprised him. I'm taking you out of here. Completely. Now she did laugh, and the sound was broken glass. You can't. The council. The council answers to me. His voice dropped to something dangerous. something that made her breath catch. And they're going to explain exactly what they've been doing. But first, I need to get these chains off you. The silver is poisoning you, keeping you weak. It's not the silver. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Her eyes widened slightly, as if she'd revealed something she shouldn't have. Damien's attention sharpened. What do you mean? Marin closed her eyes, and for a moment he thought she wouldn't answer. When she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. The chains are nothing. It's what they put inside me that's killing me. Inside her. Damien's mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. What did they put inside you? She shook her head. A slight movement that made the collar bite deeper. Blood welled where silver met skin. You wouldn't believe me. You'd think I was lying. Or insane. That's what they all think. That's why they locked me away. Try me. He kept his voice gentle despite the fury coiling in his gut. I just felt your power, Marin. I saw fragments of what they did to you. Nothing you say could be stranger than that. She opened her eyes again, and this time there was something raw in them. Something desperate. As if she'd been holding this truth inside for so long it had turned toxic. They told you I was spreading dissent. That I was poisoning the pack. But it was the opposite. Her chains rattled as she leaned forward slightly. The pack was dying. Cursed. Sickness spreading through the bloodlines. Children born weak. Wolves unable to shift. The healers couldn't stop it. The council couldn't stop it. So they found an old ritual. An ancient one. Damien's blood went cold. Scapegoat magic. She nodded. Someone had to carry it. Someone had to take the curse into themselves so the pack could be cleansed. They needed an Omega. Someone expendable. Someone whose death wouldn't matter. Your death would matter. The words came out harder than he intended. Would it? She tilted her head, and the gesture was eerily empty. I had no family. No mate. No position of value. I was perfect for them. So they asked me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And I said yes. The admission hung in the air between them. Damien stared at her, trying to process. You agreed to this? They told me it would be temporary. 1 moon cycle. That they'd perform the ritual, transfer the curse to me, then dispel it once the pack was cleansed. They promised I'd be honored. Protected. That I was saving lives. Her laugh was hollow. I believed them. But they didn't dispel it. No. Because it worked too well. The pack got stronger. Healthier. The sickness vanished. And they realized they could use me for more than just one curse. Why waste the vessel? Her silver eyes burned into his. So they kept me here. And every time something threatened the pack, a blood plague, a rival's curse, dark magic from enemy territories, they channeled it into me. Over and over. Month after month. Until I became a repository for every evil thing they wanted to hide. Damien felt sick. Not just angry. Actually physically ill at what she was describing. The council did this? All of them. The inner circle. 5 of them. They're the only ones who know the full truth. She swayed again, exhausted from talking. From revealing what had been done. The others just know I'm dangerous. That I need to be contained. They believe what they're told. 5 council members. Damien's mind cycled through faces. Elder Corvin. Lady Saris. Malek the treasurer. Theron, head of the guard. And Garrick, his own second-in-command. Garrick. His most trusted advisor. The one who'd been insistent he come judge this traitor personally. You're telling me, Damien said slowly, that my inner council has been using you as a magical dumping ground for 7 months. That they've been torturing you under the guise of justice. And that they expected me to execute you to hide the evidence. Yes. The simple affirmation carried the weight of 7 months of hell. Damien stood. His hands were shaking with rage, with guilt, with something else he couldn't name. He'd been played. Manipulated. They'd waited until he was away from the capital, then moved her down here. Fed him reports of a dangerous Omega spreading rebellion. Made sure he'd come back angry enough to pass judgment without asking too many questions. They'd almost succeeded. If he hadn't come down here himself. If he hadn't touched her. If he hadn't seen the truth. Damien. His name on her lips pulled him back. She was watching him with an intensity that didn't match her broken body. You can't tell them you know. If they realize I told you, they'll kill me before you can get back upstairs. The curse marks, they're bound to their magic. They can activate them remotely. Stop my heart. Collapse my lungs. All it takes is a word. Then we break the binding. He was already moving back to her, already reaching for the chains. You can't. Not without the original casters present. And if you bring them down here together, they'll know something's wrong. Damien forced himself to stop. To think. She was right. If he showed his hand too early, they'd eliminate the evidence, eliminate her, before he could act. He needed to be smart about this. Strategic. But every instinct in him was screaming to get her out of this cell. To break every chain and burn this place to the ground. Then what do you suggest? He hated asking. Hated that she'd been thinking about this long enough to have a plan. But she'd survived 7 months of this. She knew how they operated. Marin's eyes locked with his. You go back up. You tell them you've passed judgment. That I'm to be executed at dawn. Public ceremony. They'll expect that. She took a shaking breath. Then tonight, you come back. You bring your most loyal wolves. Not anyone from the council. And you get me out. Fast and quiet. Before they can activate the marks. And where do I take you? The capital was full of their spies. The pack lands were their territory. Anywhere but here. For the first time, something like hope flickered in her silver eyes. I just need to survive long enough to break their hold. There's a way. I've felt it. But I need time. And I need to not be chained to their anchor point. Damien studied her. This woman who should be broken. Who should be insane from isolation and pain. Instead, she was planning an escape with a clarity that spoke of an unbreakable will. Something stirred in his chest. Recognition. His wolf had gone quiet, not retreating, but watching. Assessing. Claiming. No. He shoved the thought away. This wasn't the time. She needed a king right now, not a mate bond his wolf seemed determined to imagine. I'll need names, he said. Which guards can't be trusted. Which paths they don't watch. Everything you know about how they monitor you. Relief washed over her face, so profound it hurt to witness. As if she hadn't actually believed he'd help until this moment. The night guard is Kellen. He's young. Easily bribed. The Northwest Passage leads to the old catacombs. They don't patrol it because it's supposed to be sealed. She rattled off details with a precision that said she'd been memorizing everything, waiting for a chance that might never come. Until tonight. Damien committed every word to memory. Then he did something he probably shouldn't. He reached out and gently, so gently, brushed her hair back from her face. She flinched, but didn't pull away. Up close, he could see the gold flecks in her silver eyes. The way her pupils dilated when he got near. I don't know you, he said quietly. But I know what was done to you is an abomination. And I swear on my alpha blood I will get you out. Tonight. Why? The question was small. Vulnerable. Why would you risk everything for someone like me? Someone like her. Broken. Used. Considered expendable. Damien's jaw tightened. Because you are not expendable, Marin. You never were. And because whatever they put inside you, whatever curses you're carrying, we're going to find a way to remove them. Together. Tears welled in her eyes. The first emotion beyond emptiness he'd seen. She blinked them back furiously, as if crying would undo her entirely. I should go, he said, though everything in him rebelled at leaving her here. If I stay too long, they'll get suspicious. But I'll be back. Before midnight. Be ready. I'm always ready. The ghost of something fierce moved through her expression. I've been ready since the day they locked me down here. Damien stood, forcing himself to step away. To move toward the door. He knocked once, and the dungeon master opened it immediately, had probably been listening the entire time. The prisoner will be executed at dawn, Damien announced, loud enough for any listening ears. Public ceremony in the main square. Make the preparations. The dungeon master's face remained carefully blank. Yes, Your Majesty. Damien walked past him, back into the corridor. But he paused at the threshold and glanced back one final time. Marin had lowered her head again, resuming her position of defeated submission. But he saw the tension in her shoulders, the slight curl of her fingers against stone. She was a survivor, a fighter, and tonight she was going to be free. If Damien had anything to say about it, and he did, because he was the Alpha King, heads would roll for what had been done. Starting with the 5 who'd turned his justice into a weapon. He took the stairs up 2 at a time, his mind already working through logistics. Who could he trust absolutely? Who would help him without asking too many questions? And how was he going to keep Marin alive long enough to break whatever binding held those curse marks? Because one thing was clear, the woman in that cell wasn't just an Omega who'd been used. She was something far more dangerous. And his council had been desperate enough to bury her alive. The question was, what would happen when she finally rose? The hours crawled by in the darkness. Marin kept her head bowed, her breathing measured, her body still. The guards had made their rounds twice since the Alpha King left. Each time, she'd felt their eyes on her through the slot in the door. Checking. Making sure she hadn't moved. Making sure she was still the broken thing they expected. She'd gotten good at playing broken. It was the only way to survive. But now, alone in the silence that pressed against her ears like water, she let herself remember. Let herself drift back to the girl she'd been before this cell became her entire world. Before the curse marks. Before the pain became so constant she'd learned to breathe through it like air. She'd been nobody special. That was the truth of it. Born to a lower pack family in the Outer Territories, Marin had never expected greatness. Her parents had been kind but unremarkable. Her father worked the timberlines. Her mother tended the community gardens. They'd raised her to be useful, to serve, to find her place in the pack structure and be grateful for it. And she had been grateful, content even, until the night her wolf came. Marin closed her eyes, feeling the ghost of that memory. She'd been 16. Late for a first shift, but not unheard of for Omegas. The pack had gathered for the full moon ceremony, and she'd stood among the other young wolves, waiting for the change that would mark her as a true member of the pack. It should have been simple. Painful, yes, first shifts always were, but simple. Instead, her wolf had come with silver fire. She could still feel it. The way her bones had cracked and reformed. The way her skin had split to let fur emerge. Normal. Expected. But then the light gods, the light. It had burst from her in waves, silver and cold, like moonlight given form. It had washed over the gathered wolves, and for one perfect moment, everything had gone silent. Odd. Then the screaming started. Not from pain. From fear. Because in that wash of silver light, the pack had seen things. Visions. Prophecies. Fragments of a future that shouldn't have been visible. Some had fallen to their knees, weeping. Others had run. And the elders, the ones who knew the old stories, the forbidden histories, they'd looked at her with horror. Moo-marked, Elder Corvin had whispered. The word had spread through the crowd like poison. She's moo-marked. Marin hadn't known what that meant. Not then. She'd barely understood what was happening. Her wolf had been beautiful, smaller than most, white as fresh snow with those same silver eyes. She'd felt powerful for the first time in her life. Complete. She hadn't realized she'd just signed her own death warrant. The pack had isolated her immediately. Not violently. Not with cruelty. Just distance. Her parents had been quietly relocated to a different territory. No explanation given. Her friends stopped meeting her eyes. The other Omegas whispered when she passed. Within a week, she'd gone from invisible to infamous. And the elders had watched. Always watching. It took her months to piece together the truth from stolen conversations and forbidden texts she'd found in the pack's oldest archives. Moonmarked. A wolf touched by the moon goddess herself. Born once in a generation, maybe less. They appeared in times of great change, great upheaval. They were vessels for divine power. And throughout history, they'd been used, sacrificed, burned at stakes or drowned in sacred pools or buried alive in consecrated ground. Because that power, that connection to something older than the packs, older than the alphas, older than the hierarchy itself, it was too dangerous to let walk free. It could reshape everything. So they'd kept her, studied her. The elders had run tests disguised as training. They'd made her channel her power into crystals, into wards, into healing rituals. And she'd done it, desperate to prove she wasn't dangerous. Desperate to belong again. She'd been so stupidly naive. When the sickness came, the blood plague that started killing pups and weakening the warriors, Marin had actually felt hope. Finally, a chance to use her gift for something good. To prove her worth. When Elder Corvin had approached her with the ritual proposal, she'd barely hesitated. Save the pack. Take on their curse. Be the hero. They'd made it sound noble. The ritual itself was a blur now. Pain had a way of erasing memory. But she remembered the moment the first curse entered her. Like swallowing broken glass. Like breathing acid. Her body had convulsed, rejecting it, but the silver marks they'd carved into her skin had held it in place. Forced it to stay. And it had worked. The pack's sickness had faded. The pups had recovered. The warriors had regained their strength. Everyone had celebrated. No one had checked on her. She'd spent 3 days in her room, shaking and burning and bleeding from the inside out. When she'd finally emerged weak but alive, the elders had been waiting. With smiles. With praise. With a new proposal. Just one more curse. A small one. A rival pack had sent dark magic. Would she be willing? After all, she'd already proven she could handle it. And she'd said yes. Because what else could she do? She was moonmarked. She was meant for this. The second curse had been worse. The third, worse still. By the fourth, she'd started to understand. They weren't planning to stop. They weren't planning to dispel anything. She was too useful. Too effective. Why waste resources on complicated counter curses when they had a vessel who could just absorb it all? She'd tried to run. That's when they'd put her in the cell. For your own protection, Lady Saris had said, her voice dripping false concern. The curses are making you unstable. Dangerous. You need to be contained until we can find a cure. There was no cure. There never had been. And for 7 months, Marin had knelt in the dark while they poured curse after curse into her body. Each one layered over the last. Each one carving a little more of her away. She'd felt herself hollowing out. Felt the girl she'd been, the one who'd loved running through the forests, who'd sung while she worked, who dreamed of finding a mate and having pups, disappear piece by piece. Some nights, she couldn't remember what joy felt like. Most nights, she couldn't remember why she was still fighting to breathe. But she'd kept breathing anyway. Out of spite, maybe. Or stubbornness. Or some deep, primal part of her that refused to give them the satisfaction of breaking her completely. And now the Alpha King had come. Damien. She rolled his name through her mind, testing it. He'd looked at her with something she hadn't seen in months. Not pity. Not disgust. Something closer to recognition. As if he'd seen past the scars and the chains and the curse marks to something underneath. Something that still mattered. She didn't know if she could trust it. Didn't know if she could trust him. But gods, she wanted to. Because the alternative was dying here. Slowly. While the pack above her went on living, never knowing the price of their health. Never knowing what it cost to keep them strong. Marin shifted slightly, testing the chains. The silver burned, but she'd long since grown numb to that particular pain. It was the other pain, the one inside, the one that came from housing a dozen different curses that threatened to pull her under. She could feel them now, writhing in her chest like living things. Each one whispering. Each one hungry. They wanted out. And she was terrified of what would happen if she ever lost control. If the vessel cracked and all that darkness came pouring free, would she become the monster they'd always feared? Or would she become something worse? A sound in the corridor made her freeze. Footsteps. Too early for the next guard rotation. Too quiet for the dungeon master. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The door opened slowly. No announcement. No key in the lock this time. Just the soft scrape of metal and then Damien. He wasn't alone. 3 wolves flanked him, all dressed in dark clothes, all moving with the silent efficiency of trained warriors. She didn't recognize any of them, which meant they weren't from the council's guard. Good. Damien crossed to her immediately, dropping to one knee. His eyes scanned her face, checking for what? Damage? Change? She didn't know. Are you hurt? His voice was low. Urgent. Did they come back? She shook her head. No. Nothing since you left. Relief flickered across his face. Then he turned to one of the wolves, a woman with short dark hair and eyes that glowed amber in the torchlight. Brielle. The chains. The woman moved forward, pulling tools from her belt. Not keys. Something else. She studied the locks, the wards, the way the silver had been woven with darker magic. Her lips pressed into a thin line. This is going to hurt her, Brielle said quietly. The silver's been on too long. It's partially fused with the skin. And these wards, they're designed to shock if tampered with. Can you break them? Damien's question left no room for doubt. Yes, but she needs to be ready. It's going to feel like fire. Marin almost laughed. Fire. She lived in fire. What was a little more? Do it, she said before Damien could ask. Brielle nodded once, then pressed her tools against the first lock. There was a sound like breaking glass. Then light, white, and searing. The ward shattered, and pain exploded through Marin's wrist. She bit down on her tongue, tasting copper, refusing to scream. Refusing to give them, or herself, the satisfaction. The first chain fell away. Then the second. The third. Each one bringing fresh agony as the silver released its hold, as the wards broke and backlashed through her system. By the time Brielle reached the collar, Marin was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. But she stayed silent. Stayed still. The collar snapped open. And the world lurched. Without the chains suppressing her power, without the wards holding everything in place, the curses surged. She felt them rise like a tide, felt them claw toward the surface, felt her control start to slip. Damien's hands caught her shoulders. Marin, look at me. Stay with me. She forced her eyes to focus. Silver met gold. Alpha power pressed against her, not dominating but steadying, giving her something to anchor to. Breathe, he commanded softly. In. Out. You're in control. Not them. You. In. Out. In. Out. Slowly, so slowly, the curses settled. Sank back down. The beast inside her quieted. Marin sagged forward, and Damien caught her. Held her. For one absurd moment, she wanted to laugh. Or cry. She couldn't remember the last time someone had touched her with kindness instead of clinical detachment. Can you walk? He asked. I don't know. Honest. Her legs felt like water. She wasn't sure they'd hold her weight. Then I'll carry you. He shifted, sliding one arm beneath her knees, the other around her back. The movement should have hurt, everything hurt, but somehow, cradled against his chest, it felt almost safe. We need to move fast, one of the other wolves said. Male. Dark-haired. Watching the door with predator focus. Kellen's shift ends in 10 minutes. After that, we lose our window. Damien stood, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. Northwest Passage. Lead the way, Ronan. They moved as a unit. Silent. Swift. Through corridors Marin had only seen in glimpses. Upstairs that made her head spin. Past cells that held other prisoners, wolves who turned to watch as they passed, eyes wide with shock or fear or something else. She buried her face against Damien's shoulder, overwhelmed. The world was too big suddenly. Too bright, even in the dim torchlight. 7 months in near darkness had made her sensitive to everything. Almost there, Damien murmured against her hair. Just hold on. She held on. They reached a section of wall that looked solid. Ronan pressed his hand against a specific stone, and it shifted. Swung inward. A passage. Narrow and dark and smelling of earth and age. The catacombs. They slipped inside, and Brielle sealed the entrance behind them. For a moment, there was total darkness. Then someone lit a small light, magical, flickering blue, and shadows danced on ancient stone walls. How far? Damien asked. 1/2 mile, Ronan answered. Comes out in the old northern forest. There's a safe house waiting. 1/2 mile. Merrin could do 1/2 mile. She had to. Because behind them, in that cell, she'd left nothing but empty chains. And above them, 5 council members who would realize by morning that their vessel had escaped. That their carefully constructed lie was about to unravel. That the Alpha King now knew exactly what they'd done. Merrin closed her eyes, feeling the steady rhythm of Damien's heartbeat beneath her ear. Feeling the curse marks on her skin pulse and burn. Feeling, for the first time in 7 months, something that might have been hope. She didn't know what came next. But she knew she wouldn't face it in chains. And somehow, that made all the difference. The safe house was more ruin than refuge. It sat in a clearing deep in the northern forest, where the old pines grew so thick their branches wove together overhead, blocking out the moon. Stone walls crumbled at the corners. Moss claimed what had once been windows. But inside, someone had prepared. Blankets. Supplies. A fire already burning in the ancient hearth. Damien carried Merrin through the doorway and set her down carefully on a makeshift bed near the warmth. She immediately tried to sit up, to prove she could manage, but her body betrayed her. Her legs buckled. Her vision swam. Easy. His hand steadied her shoulder. You've been chained for 7 months. Your body needs time. We don't have time. Her voice came out hoarse. Raw. They'll know I'm gone by dawn. They'll come looking. Let them look. Damien's tone carried the weight of absolute authority. This place is warded. Old magic. Older than the pack. Older than the council. They won't find us here. Brielle moved through the space with practiced efficiency, checking the wards carved into the doorframe and windows. Ronan positioned himself by the entrance, sentinel still. The third wolf, a younger man Merrin hadn't been introduced to, began unpacking medical supplies. This is Kian, Damien said, following her gaze. He's a healer. One of the few I trust completely. Kian approached with careful movements, as if she were a wild thing that might bolt. Maybe she was. I need to examine the curse marks, he said gently. See how deep they've anchored. Is that all right? Merrin nodded. What choice did she have? If the marks couldn't be removed, if the curses couldn't be extracted, then this entire escape was just prolonging the inevitable. Kian knelt beside her, his hands hovering over her shoulders where the worst of the scarring lived. He didn't touch. Not yet. Just closed his eyes and let his power extend a soft, green-gold light that felt like summer rain. His eyes snapped open. Gods above. What? Damien moved closer. What is it? There are 12 distinct curse matrices woven into her flesh. 12. Kian's voice shook slightly. I've never seen anything like this. The complexity, the layering, whoever designed this knew exactly what they were doing. These aren't just absorption marks. They're transformation marks. Transformation. Merrin's stomach dropped. What does that mean? Kian met her eyes, and she saw something close to awe in his expression. Awe mixed with fear. It means they weren't just using you to hold curses. They were using you to alchemize them. To transform dark magic into something else. Something that could be harvested. The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. Harvested for what? Power. Damien's voice had gone cold. Lethal. They've been siphoning your energy. The energy you generate by processing these curses. That's why the pack has been thriving. Not just because you took their sickness, because you've been converting that sickness into pure, usable magic. Marin felt the world tilt. No. They told me I was helping. You were helping. Brielle spoke from her position by the door. Just not in the way they claimed. They turned you into a generator. A magical battery. And they've been draining you to fuel their own ambitions. The rage that swept through Marin was sharp enough to taste. All this time. All this suffering. And it wasn't even about saving the pack. It was about power. About 5 wolves who'd found a way to make themselves stronger at her expense. The curse marks on her skin began to burn. Marin. Damien's hand touched her arm. Your eyes. She looked down and saw silver light bleeding from her skin. Saw the marks glowing like brands. The curses were responding to her anger. Rising to meet it. You need to calm down, Kian said urgently. If you lose control here. I'm not going to lose control. But even as she said it, she felt the power building. Felt it pressing against the inside of her ribs like something alive. Something that wanted out. I need air. Space. Something. She stood abruptly, stumbling toward the door. Ronan moved to block her path, but Damien waved him aside. Let her go. Stay close, but give her room. Marin pushed outside into the night. The cold air hit her like a shock, and she gasped, drinking it in. The forest surrounded her, ancient and watchful. She could feel the trees observing. Could feel the earth beneath her bare feet humming with old magic. She walked forward on trembling legs, putting distance between herself and the safe house. Between herself and the wolves inside who were all staring at her like she was something dangerous. Something other. Maybe she was. She reached the center of the clearing, where moonlight broke through the canopy in silver streams. And there, half buried in moss and earth, she saw it. A stone altar. Circular. Carved with symbols that made her head ache to look at. Runes in a language she didn't know but somehow recognized. The same symbols that had been carved into her cell walls. The same ones that marked her skin. This place wasn't just a safe house. It was a temple. Marin, wait, Damien's voice came from behind her, but she was already moving forward. Already drawn by something she couldn't name. Her feet found the stones as if they'd walked this path 1,000 times before. As if her body remembered what her mind had forgotten. She stopped at the altar's edge. The stone was warm beneath her touch. Alive. And when she looked down, she saw that the symbols were glowing. Responding to her presence. This place, she whispered. What is this place? Damien approached slowly. Carefully. The Temple of the First Moon. One of the oldest sites in the territories. It was here before the packs. Before the alphas. Before any of us. Why did you bring me here? Because I didn't know where else to take you. And because, he hesitated. Because the old texts say this place calls to those who are moonmarked. That it recognizes them. Protects them. Moonmarked. That word again. The curse that had followed her since her first shift. Marin placed both palms flat on the altar. The moment her skin touched stone, light exploded. Silver and blinding. It shot up from the altar in pillars that reached toward the sky, illuminating the entire clearing. The runes blazed. The forest went utterly silent. And Marin heard a voice. Not out loud. Inside. In that place where her wolf lived. In that space between thought and instinct. Daughter of the moon. Bearer of curses. We have waited. Who? Her voice cracked. Who's there? We are the first. The mothers. The ones who walked before words were written. Before packs were formed. Before power was stolen and hoarded. The light coalesced. Shaped itself into forms that were almost, but not quite human. Feminine. Flowing. Made of moonlight and memory. Damien had gone to his knees, head bowed. Brielle, Ronan, and Kian had emerged from the safe house and dropped into similar positions. Reverence or fear, Marin couldn't tell. You have been marked, daughter. Chosen. Not by them, by us. The council found you and used you because they sensed what you carried. But they understand nothing of what you truly are. Then tell me. Marin's voice shook. Tell me what I am. Because I don't know anymore. I don't know if I'm a victim or a weapon or a monster waiting to happen. The figures drifted closer. One reached out a hand that was more light than flesh and touched Marin's forehead. You are the vessel of transformation, born once in 1,000 moons. You do not merely hold darkness, you change it. Purify it. Return it to source. You are the moon's own alchemy. Then why does it hurt so much? The question came out broken. Desperate. Why does it feel like I'm dying? Because they have twisted your gift. Forced it to serve their greed instead of its true purpose. The curses they placed within you were never meant to stay. They were meant to pass through, to be transformed and released. But they have dammed the flow, made you a prison instead of a river. How do I undo it? Damien spoke from his position on the ground. How do we break what they've done? The figures turned their attention to him. Marin felt their regards sweep over the Alpha King, measuring, assessing. You are not Mu-marked, King of Wolves. But you are bound to her now. The moment you touched her in that cell, the moment you chose to save her, you tied your fate to hers. Do you understand what that means? Damien lifted his head, met the being's gaze without flinching. No, but I don't care. Tell me how to help her. She must release what she has been holding. All of it. At once. It will destroy her. Unless she has an anchor strong enough to hold her through the transformation. Someone who can share the burden without being consumed. Me. Damien stood. I'll be her anchor. No, Marin turned to face him. You don't know what you're offering. The curses inside me, they're not just sickness. They're concentrated evil. Malice and rot and every dark thing the council wanted to hide. If I release them and you're connected to me, then I'll share it. His gold eyes burned into hers. I'm an alpha, Marin. I was born to bear burdens, to protect my pack. And you, he stopped. Something raw crossed his face. Your pack. My pack. Even if you don't know it yet. The moon's spirits hummed with what might have been approval. The bond must be forged in intention. In sacrifice. In truth. Alpha King, if you do this, you will be changed. The darkness will mark you as it has marked her. Are you willing? Yes. He didn't hesitate. Didn't question. Just yes. Marin felt something crack open in her chest. Something that had been frozen for 7 months. She wanted to argue. To protect him. To tell him he was insane for offering to chain himself to someone so broken. But gods, she was tired. And the thought of not being alone in this, of having someone strong enough to stand with her through what came next, it was almost more than she could bear. What do we have to do? She asked quietly. The moon's spirits raised their arms. The altar beneath Marin's hands grew warmer. The runes began to shift, rearranging themselves into a pattern that looked like a circle. Like a bond. Stand together. Hand to hand. Heart to heart. Speak your intention to the moon who watches all. Then accept what comes. Damien moved to face her. He reached out, and after a moment's hesitation, Marin placed her hands in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm, solid, real. The curse marks on her skin flared, and she saw him flinch as power arced between them. But he didn't let go. I don't even know you, she whispered. Why would you do this? His answer was simple. Devastating. Because you deserve someone who will. The moon's spirits began to sing. A sound that was more feeling than music. It wrapped around them, through them, binding something fundamental. Marin felt her wolf rise for the first time in months, felt it press against her skin, eager, alive. And she felt Damien's alpha power answer, vast and steady as mountains. Speak your truth, vessel. What do you choose? Marin looked at the man holding her hands. The king who'd descended into darkness to find her. Who'd seen what she was and hadn't turned away. I choose to live, she said. I choose to fight. And I choose to transform this darkness into light no matter what it costs. And you, Alpha King? I choose her. Damien's voice rang clear. I choose to stand witness. To anchor her through the storm. To share the burden until it breaks, or we do. The moon's spirits flared brilliant. The altar beneath them cracked, and light poured upward like a fountain. It engulfed them both, and Maren felt the curse marks on her skin begin to burn in earnest. Felt the 12 curses start to wake. Start to rise. Felt, for the first time since this nightmare began, the possibility of freedom. Hold on to me, Damien commanded softly. No matter what happens. Don't let go. Maren tightened her grip. Don't let go, she echoed. The light swallowed them whole. And in the forest beyond, 5 council members jolted awake, feeling the precise moment their carefully constructed prison shattered. The transformation was agony. Maren felt the curses tear free from where they'd been anchored deep in her bones. 12 distinct threads of darkness, each one screaming as it was ripped from her flesh. They writhed through her bloodstream, clawing for purchase, desperate to stay rooted. But the moon's spirit's power was absolute. It dragged them toward the surface with relentless force. She would have collapsed if not for Damien's hands locked around hers. His face had gone pale, jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. He was feeling it too. Every curse, as it passed through her, was passing through him. Shared. The bond they'd forged meant he bore witness to every ounce of poison that had been poured into her. Stay with me. His voice was gravel and iron. Breathe, Maren. Breathe. She tried. Gods, she tried. But the pain was transcendent. Beyond anything the physical body was meant to endure. One curse broke free, a blood plague that had killed 17 pups, and she tasted copper. Felt her veins burn like acid. Damien's grip tightened, his own power surging to meet it, to dilute it, to help her body process and expel what should have destroyed her months ago. The second curse came. Then the third. Dark magic that had been meant to cripple an enemy pack's warriors. A hex designed to cause madness. Each one worse than the last. Each one leaving marks as it exited, not on her skin this time, but deeper. Soul deep. The moon's spirits sang louder, their voices rising to a crescendo that made the very air vibrate. The light surrounding Maren and Damien intensified until it was blinding. Until the entire clearing was bathed in silver radiance that could probably be seen for miles. And that's when she heard them coming. Footsteps. Dozens of them. Crashing through the forest with the subtlety of an army. Wolves who'd been sent to find her. To drag her back. To silence what she knew before it could spread. Damien, she gasped out. They're here. I know. His eyes hadn't left hers. Ronan. Brielle. Hold them off. Your Majesty, there are too many. Ronan's protest cut short as the first wolves burst into the clearing. Not guards. Not soldiers. Council members themselves. Elder Corvin led them, his weathered face twisted with fury. Lady Saris flanked him, her elegant features sharp with calculation. And behind them, Malek, Theron, and Garrick. The 5 who'd orchestrated everything. Who'd used her and lied to their king, and were now faced with the evidence of their crimes blazing like a beacon. Stop this. Corvin's voice cracked like a whip. Stop this madness immediately. The moon's spirit song never faltered. The ritual continued, relentless. You have no authority here, Elder. Damien's words came out strained but absolute. This is sacred ground. The moon's territory. Not yours. That woman is a threat to the entire pack. Saris stepped forward, her hand raised. Power gathered around her fingers, ugly, dark magic that made Maren's stomach turn. She's been compromised. Corrupted. If you release those curses, they'll spread. They'll kill us all. Liar. The word ripped from Maren's throat. You put them in me. You've been draining me. Using me to fuel your own power. She's delusional, Malek interjected smoothly. 7 months in isolation. The curses have damaged her mind. Your Majesty, please, you must see reason. We can contain her safely. Find a cure. But this, he gestured at the blazing light. This will destroy her. Or free her. Damien's voice dropped to something dangerous. Which is what you're really afraid of. That she'll survive. That she'll tell the truth. That everyone will know what you've done. Garrick, Damien's own second-in-command, stepped forward. His face was carefully neutral, but Meryn saw the calculation in his eyes. My king, I beg you to reconsider. The council acted in the pack's best interest. Sometimes difficult choices must be made. You're done speaking. Damien's alpha command hit like a physical blow. Garrick stumbled back, his wolf forced into submission. All of you. You committed treason. You tortured an innocent member of this pack. You manipulated your alpha king. And you did it all for power. For the pack's survival. Corvin's composure cracked. The territories are unstable. Other alphas grow bold. We needed strength. She was willing. I was lied to. Meryn's shout echoed across the clearing. Another curse tore free. This one had been harvested from a dying land, poison meant to rot crops and starve populations. She screamed as it burned through her, but the moon's spirits caught it, transformed it, released it as pure energy that dissipated into the night sky. 9 curses down. 3 to go. We don't have time for this, Brielle said urgently. They brought reinforcements. I count 20 wolves in the tree line. All armed. 20. Against the 4 of them. Even with Damien's alpha power, those odds were impossible. We just need to hold them until the ritual completes, Kian called out. He'd positioned himself between the altar and the advancing council members, his healer's magic already weaving defensive wards. 5 more minutes. Maybe less. 5 minutes might as well be 5 hours. Theron, head of the guard, drew a blade. Silver. Designed to kill shifters. Your Majesty, I'm sorry, but we cannot allow this to continue. For the good of the pack. The good of the pack? Damien's laugh was bitter. You keep using those words. I don't think you know what they mean. The 10th curse broke free. This one was different. Personal. Meryn felt it immediately, recognized it. The curse that had been placed on Damien himself. A subtle thing, woven into his food months ago. Designed to cloud his judgment. To make him more suggestible. To keep him distracted while the council operated in the shadows. They'd been poisoning their own king. Damien's eyes widened as the truth hit him. As he felt the curse pass through their bond and recognized it for what it was. The rage that flooded his expression was terrifying. You dared, his voice was barely human. His wolf pressed against his skin, visible in the way his eyes bled to pure gold. You poisoned me? A mild influence, Saris said quickly. Nothing permanent. Just enough to keep you from asking inconvenient questions. She didn't get to finish. Damien moved with alpha speed, crossing the space between them in a heartbeat. His hand wrapped around her throat, lifting her off her feet. The other council members surged forward, but Ronan and Brielle intercepted them. The clearing erupted into chaos. Damien, don't break the bond. Meryn's warning came as the 11th curse began to rise. This one was massive. Old. A hex designed to break mate bonds. To sever the sacred connection between wolves. The council had been planning to use it on rival packs. To destroy their families from within. It was the cruelest thing Meryn had ever encountered. And it fought. Gods, it fought. It didn't want to leave. It had buried itself deep, wrapped around her heart, feeding on every moment of loneliness and isolation she'd endured. It knew her pain. It was made of her pain. I can't, she gasped, feeling her knees buckle. Damien, I can't, this one's too strong. He dropped Saris instantly, returning to Meryn's side. His hands found hers again, and his power slammed into her. Into the curse. Battling it with everything he had. Yes, you can. His forehead pressed against hers. You're stronger than anything they put in you. Stronger than their lies. Stronger than their fear. You are moon-marked, Meryn. You were born for this. The moon spirit's song shifted. Changed. They were singing directly to her now, in a language that bypassed her ears and spoke straight to her soul. You have been alone. You have been broken. You have been used. But you are not destroyed. Release the pain, daughter. Release the isolation. You are not alone anymore. And she wasn't. She could feel Damien beside her. Could feel his strength pouring into her. Could feel his absolute certainty that she would survive this. Someone believed in her. Someone chose her. The realization was enough. The curse shattered, broke apart like glass and dissolved into light. The moon's spirits caught it, transformed it, sent it skyward where it burst like a star. 11 down. 1 to go. But the 12th curse didn't rise. It stayed buried, coiled tight around something fundamental. Maren reached for it and recoiled immediately. This wasn't like the others. This one was different. This one was hers. Not placed by the council. Placed by her. The night of her first shift, when the pack had looked at her with fear. When she'd realized she was other. Dangerous. Wrong. She'd cursed herself. Locked away her own power because she'd been too afraid of what it meant. Too afraid of being alone. Of being cast out. She'd crippled herself before anyone else could do it for her. No, the word came out small. Broken. I can't release this one. Why not? Damien's voice was gentle despite the battle raging around them. Because if I do, if I accept what I am, tears burned her eyes. I'll never be normal. I'll never be safe. I'll always be the thing everyone fears. The moon's spirits drifted closer. Their voices were impossibly kind. You were never meant to be normal, daughter. You were meant to be free. But I don't know how to be that. The admission ripped from her. I don't know how to be powerful without being a monster. Damien's hands cupped her face, forcing her to look at him. His eyes were gold fire and absolute conviction. Then I'll show you. Every day. For as long as it takes. You don't have to do this alone, Maren. Not anymore. Around them, the fight intensified. Ronan went down with a blade in his shoulder. Brielle was surrounded by 3 council guards. Kian's wards were failing. They were out of time. If you release it, Damien said quietly, you'll have the power to stop them. To end this. To make sure they never use anyone like this again. That's what decided it. Not her own freedom. Not her own power. But the thought of someone else, another young Omega, another moon-marked wolf, ending up in that cell. Bearing what she'd borne. Suffering what she'd suffered. No. Never again. Maren reached inside herself. Found that 12th curse her own fear, her own shame, her own belief that she was too much and not enough all at once. And she grabbed it with both hands. I am moon-marked, she whispered. I am the vessel of transformation. I am powerful. And I am done being afraid. The curse exploded. And with it, Maren. Silver light erupted from her skin in waves. Her body lifted off the altar, suspended in pure energy. The marks on her shoulders blazed brilliant, no longer scars, but sigils. Active. Alive. The moon spirits raised their arms in exultation, and their voices peaked in a note that shook the earth itself. Maren felt her wolf surge forward. Felt the shift take her, not painful this time, but glorious. Her bones reformed. Her body changed. And when she opened her eyes, the world was sharper. Clearer. More. She stood on 4 legs, white fur gleaming like snow. But she was larger than any Omega should be. Larger than most betas. And when she looked at her reflection in a puddle nearby, she saw those silver eyes burning with power that could reshape the world. The entire clearing went silent. Every wolf, friend and enemy alike, had frozen. Staring. Because what stood before them wasn't just a moon-marked wolf. It was a moon wolf. The first seen in 1,000 years. Maren threw back her head and howled. The sound shattered every ward. Every binding. Every piece of dark magic the council had woven through the packlands. It rolled out in waves, cleansing, purifying, transforming. And in the capital, miles away, Every wolf who'd benefited from her suffering felt the truth slam into them like judgment. The council members in the clearing fell to their knees. Not in submission. In pain. The magic they'd stolen, the power they'd siphoned, it was being ripped away. Returned to source. Returned to her. Corvin looked up at Marin, his face ashen. What are you? Damien shifted, his own wolf rising. Massive. Golden. He moved to stand beside her, shoulder to shoulder. She's justice, he said simply. And you're going to answer for every single thing you've done. The council members were bound in silver and dragged away by dawn. Marin watched from the temple steps as Ronan and a contingent of loyal guards escorted them back toward the capital. Corvin walked with his head bowed. Saris kept trying to speak, to explain, to justify. Garrick met Damien's eyes once, a look of bitter regret, before turning away. They would face trial. Public judgment. The pack would know everything. But that would come later. For now, Marin stood in her human form, wrapped in a cloak Brielle had provided, and tried to understand what had happened to her body. To her power. To everything. The transformation had left her changed. She could feel it in the way her senses had sharpened, every sound crystal clear, every scent distinct. She could feel the pulse of magic in the earth beneath her feet. Could sense the wolves in the forest, their emotions like distant songs. And the curse marks on her skin, they no longer burned. They'd become something else. Channels. Pathways for power to flow through instead of being trapped. She was no longer a prison. She was a conduit. You should rest. Damien's voice came from behind her. He'd remained in wolf form through the night, guarding the perimeter while Kian tended to Ronan's injury and Brielle reinforced the temple's wards. But now he was human again, dressed in clothes someone had brought from the safe house. He looked exhausted. Drained. The ritual had taken its toll on him too. I can't rest. Marin's fingers traced the sigil on her shoulder, the largest one, the one that had been carved first. It glowed faintly under her touch. I can feel them. All across the packlands. Wolves who were sick. Who were cursed. I can feel their pain like it's my own. That's because you're still connected to them. Kian approached, medical bag in hand. His healer's senses were likely picking up the same thing. The ritual broke the council's bindings, but the pathways they created, those are still open. Your power is still trying to help. To heal. So I'm still their vessel. The bitterness in her voice surprised her. No, Damien moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. You're their healer. By choice. There's a difference. Was there? Marin wasn't sure anymore. The line between sacrifice and duty had blurred somewhere in that cell. Come inside, Damien said gently. Let Kian examine you properly. Then we'll figure out what comes next. She wanted to argue. To insist she was fine. But the truth was she was swaying on her feet, held upright by will alone. So she nodded and let him guide her back into the temple. The interior had been transformed. Someone, probably Brielle, had cleaned the space, arranged the supplies, made it feel less like a ruin and more like a sanctuary. The fire burned steady in the hearth. Blankets and furs had been spread near the warmth. It was almost comfortable. Kian gestured for her to sit. She did, too tired to protest as he began his examination. His hands hovered over her skin, that green-gold light flowing from his palms. She felt it probe gently at the sigils, testing their stability. Remarkable, he murmured. The curse marks have fully integrated. They're part of your physiology now. And your body, Marin, you're generating more power than before. The ritual didn't just free you. It amplified you. Is that good or bad? She was almost afraid to ask. Neither. It just is. Kian sat back, his expression thoughtful. But you'll need to learn control. Right now, your power is responding to emotion. To need. If you're not careful, you could burn yourself out trying to heal everyone at once. Then teach me. The words came out more desperate than she intended. Please. I can't go back to being helpless. To being used. I need to understand what I am. I can try. But honestly, Kian glanced at Damien. She needs someone who understands moon magic. Real moon magic. Not the watered-down version we practice. There are texts. Old ones. In the capital's vault. Then we'll get them. Damien's tone left no room for argument. Your Majesty, Brielle had entered, her expression cautious. Forgive me, but you can't go back to the capital. Not yet. The council's arrest will cause upheaval. Questions. Accusations. Half the pack won't believe what happened. They'll think you've been compromised. That she, a gesture toward Marin, has enchanted you. Of course they would. Marin felt something cold settle in her stomach. She'd gone from prisoner to threat in the span of a night. The pack would fear her even more now, especially once they learned what she'd become. Then what do you suggest? Damien asked, though his jaw was tight. Give it time. A few days. Let the truth spread naturally. Let people see the council members' crimes. Meanwhile, Brielle looked at Marin. You stay here. Hidden. Safe. Until we know how the pack will react. So I trade one cell for another. Marin's laugh was hollow. It's not a cell if you can leave. Damien's voice was firm. No one is imprisoning you, Marin. But Brielle's right. The pack is unstable. And there are wolves who benefited from the council's schemes. Who won't want the truth exposed? Until we know who we can trust. I should hide. She finished the sentence, understanding even as she hated it. Fine. I'll stay. The silence that followed was heavy. Uncomfortable. Brielle excused herself to check the perimeter. Kian gathered his supplies and murmured something about preparing healing drafts. And then it was just Marin and Damien, alone in the firelight. He sat down beside her. Not too close, but close enough that she was aware of him. Of the way his presence seemed to fill the space. Alpha power, yes. But something else too. Something that made her wolf press against her skin, curious. Interested. I meant what I said, Damien spoke quietly. During the ritual. About choosing you. Marin's throat tightened. You don't even know me. Maybe not. But I know what you've survived. I know your strength. Your courage. He turned to look at her, and those gold eyes were devastating. And I know that when I touched you in that cell, something in me recognized something in you. My wolf, he paused. My wolf has never reacted to anyone the way it reacted to you. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She knew what he was implying. Knew what that recognition meant in shifter culture. But she couldn't let herself believe it. Couldn't let herself hope. You're an alpha king, she said carefully. You could have anyone. Any wolf in any pack would be honored. I don't want anyone. His hand reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her cheek. The touch sent electricity racing through her. I want the woman who survived 7 months of hell and came out unbroken. I want the wolf who held justice into existence. I want you, Marin. If you'll have me. She should say no. Should tell him he was caught up in the intensity of the ritual, the bond they'd forged, the adrenaline of battle. That this wasn't real. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw the truth. Saw the certainty there. And she felt it echo in her own chest. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. No one has ever, she couldn't finish. Couldn't voice the loneliness that had defined her entire life. Then we'll figure it out together. He smiled, and it transformed his face. Made him look younger. Less burdened. I'm not very good at this either. Being a king means everyone wants something from you. Everyone has an agenda. But you, his thumb traced along her jaw. You don't want anything from me, do you? No, the word was honest. I just want to not be alone. Then you won't be. He shifted closer, and she let him. Let herself lean into his warmth. I know you're afraid. I know trusting someone after what was done to you is nearly impossible. But I'm asking anyway. Give me a chance, Marin. Let me prove that not everyone will hurt you. She closed her eyes, feeling tears threaten again. When had she become someone who cried so easily? 7 months in that cell, she hadn't shed a single tear. But now, faced with kindness, with care, she was falling apart. I'm broken, she whispered. Damaged. What if I can't be what you need? You're not broken. His voice was fierce. You're healing. There's a difference. And I don't need you to be anything except yourself. Herself. Marin wasn't even sure who that was anymore. But maybe she could find out. With someone beside her who didn't expect her to be perfect or powerful or anything except present. She opened her eyes and found him watching her with an expression so tender it hurt. Okay, she said softly. Okay, we can try. The smile that broke across his face was worth every moment of fear. He pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her, and she let herself be held. Let herself sink into the feeling of safety she hadn't known in so long. They sat like that for a long time, watching the fire burn down to embers. No words needed. Just presence. Just the comfort of not being alone. Eventually, exhaustion claimed her. Marin felt herself drifting, her body finally surrendering to sleep. Damien shifted carefully, lowering them both down onto the furs. He kept his arms around her, solid and warm and real. Sleep, he murmured against her hair. I'll watch over you. Promise? The words slipped out, childlike. Promise. And for the first time in 7 months, Marin slept without nightmares. Outside, the forest stirred. Wolves moved through the shadows, not council guards this time, but something else. Something older. They circled the temple at a distance, watching. Waiting. In the capital, the pack gathered in the square as news spread. The council's crimes. The torture. The lies. Some wolves wept. Others raged. And a dangerous few, began to whisper that perhaps the council had been right. That perhaps the moon-marked wolf was the real threat. That perhaps she needed to be eliminated before she destroyed them all. And in a den deep beneath the city, a wolf who'd been silent for years lifted his head, scented the air, felt the shift in power that rippled through the territory. The moon wolf had awakened, which meant the old prophecies were in motion, which meant everything was about to change. He smiled, showing teeth that were too sharp. Too many. Finally, after 1,000 years of waiting, the hunt could begin. 3 days passed in the temple like a stolen dream. Marin learned what it meant to be treated like a person instead of a tool. Damien stayed with her, leaving only when necessary to receive reports from Brielle about the situation in the capital. They talked about everything and nothing. About his childhood as an alphazaire, the weight of the crown he'd inherited too young. About her life before the cell, the small joys she'd found in tending the gardens, running through the forests, dreaming of a future that had seemed so simple then. Kian brought her the ancient texts, and together they studied the moon magic flowing through her veins. She practiced channeling it, learning to direct instead of suppress. Learning that power didn't have to be destructive. That she could heal without harming herself. That transformation could be gentle. And at night, when the fire burned low, Damien held her. Just held her. No expectations. No demands. Just the comfort of presence. Of not being alone. It was the most peace Marin had known in her entire life. Which should have been her first warning. Peace never lasted. The morning of the 4th day, Brielle arrived at dawn with news. Her face was grim, her movements sharp with tension. The pack is demanding answers, she said without preamble. They want to see her. The council members are screaming for a trial, claiming they're innocent. And there are wolves, influential wolves, saying the whole thing is a lie. That you've been bewitched. Damien's joy tightened. Who? Lord Stellan. Elder Talia. And Brielle hesitated. Your uncle. Lord Valen. Marin felt Damien go rigid beside her. His uncle. She'd heard him mention Valen once, his father's brother, who'd stepped aside when Damien took the throne. Who'd supported him publicly, but always seemed to be waiting for something. Valen is calling for my removal, Damien said flatly. Not a question. He's calling for an emergency council session. Says you're unfit to rule if you can be so easily manipulated. He's gathering support. Brielle's eyes flicked to Marin. and he wants her brought before the pack. To prove she's not dangerous. Absolutely not. Damien's response was immediate. I'll do it. Marin's voice cut through his protest. Both of them turned to stare at her. You can't be serious, Damien said. They'll try to hurt you. To provoke you into losing control so they can justify. I know. Marin stood, feeling steadier than she had in days. The practice had helped. The rest had helped. But more than that, she was tired of hiding. But if I don't face them, they'll use my absence as proof that I'm guilty. That I'm controlling you. This doesn't end until I show them I'm not a threat. You're not a threat. His voice was fierce. You're a victim who survived. I'm a moonwolf. She met his eyes. And they're terrified of what that means. Running won't change that. I have to show them I'm not their enemy. Damien looked like he wanted to argue. To lock her in this temple and fight her battles for her. But slowly, reluctantly, she saw understanding dawn in his expression. He knew she was right. Then we do this together, he said finally. I stand beside you. No matter what they say. No matter what they try. Together, she echoed, and felt the bond between them pulse with warmth. They arrived at the capital as the sun reached its peak. The pack had gathered in the great hall, hundreds of wolves packed into a space, meant to hold half that number. The air was thick with tension. With fear. With the kind of volatile energy that could ignite into violence at any moment. Marin walked between Damien and Brielle, her head high despite every instinct screaming at her to run. She'd dressed simply, a plain tunic and pants, nothing that suggested power or threat. But it didn't matter. The moment she entered, the hall went silent. Every eye locked on her. She felt their stares like physical weight. Felt their fear. Their curiosity. Their anger. Some looked at her with wonder. She could see it in the younger wolves especially. The awe at seeing something from the old stories made flesh. But others looked at her with pure hatred. Those were the ones who'd benefited from her suffering. Who'd grown stronger while she weakened. Who'd never asked questions about the cost of their health. Lord Valen stood at the head of the room, positioned where the Alpha King should be. He was older than Damien's, silver threading through his dark hair, lines carved deep around his eyes. But he stood straight, powerful, every inch the alpha he'd been born to be. Nephew, he said, his voice carrying across the hall. How generous of you to join us. And you've brought your pet. The insult landed like a slap. Marin felt Damien tense beside her, felt his alpha power surge. But she placed a hand on his arm. Steady. Calm. I'm no one's pet, Lord Valen, she said clearly. I'm Marin. A member of this pack. One who was tortured in your Alpha King's name while he was away. Or did you not know about the cells beneath the capital? Valen's expression didn't change. I knew the council was containing a dangerous element. For the pack's safety. Is that what you call it? Containment. Her voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. I was chained. Starved. Used as a vessel for every curse the council wanted to hide. For 7 months. And you call that containment? You're moonmarked. Talia spoke up from her position near the front. The elderly she-wolf looked at Marin with cold assessment. Your kind has always been dangerous. Unstable. The council was right to take precautions. The council committed treason, Damien interjected. They manipulated pack law. They tortured an innocent wolf. And they poisoned me to keep me from discovering their crimes. Those are the facts. Are they? Valen's smile was thin. Or are those the lies a bewitched king tells himself? You disappeared for 3 days, Damien. 3 days alone with a moo-marked wolf who has every reason to hate this pack. And now you return, defending her. Claiming our most respected elders are criminals. Forgive me if I question your judgment. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Marin felt the tide turning. Felt doubt spreading like poison. They wanted to believe Valen. Because believing him meant they could go back to their lives. Meant they didn't have to confront the ugly truth of what had been done in their name. I have proof, Damien said. The curse marks on her skin. The records in the council's chambers. The testimonies. Of wolves loyal to you, Valen interrupted. Brielle. Ronan. Kian. All wolves in your inner circle. All wolves who might lie to protect their king. Where's the impartial evidence? The evidence is me. Meryn stepped forward, away from Damien's protective presence. Look at me. Look at what they did. She pulled back her tunic, exposing her shoulder. The sigil blazed there, impossible to miss. Impossible to fake. The crowd gasped. Some recoiled. Others leaned forward, drawn despite their fear. These marks were carved into my flesh, she said, her voice steady now. Each one represents a curse the council channeled through me. A blood plague. A madness hex. Dark magic meant to destroy rival packs. They made me a weapon. A battery. And they drained me to fuel their ambitions. Or, Valen said smoothly, those marks are exactly what we feared. Proof that you've been corrupted. That you're now a carrier for darkness that could infect us all. The logic was twisted. Sick. But Meryn saw it land. Saw wolves nodding. Saw the fear in their eyes intensify. If I wanted to hurt this pack, she said quietly, I could have done it already. The power I carry now, after the ritual, I could level this entire hall with a thought. But I haven't. Because I'm not your enemy. Then prove it. Stellan, a broad-shouldered alpha with eyes like ice, stepped forward. Prove you can control that power. That you won't lose yourself to it. How? The question came out sharper than she intended. Stellan's smile was predatory. Fight me. Here. Now. Show us you can face a challenge without resorting to your moon magic. Show us you're still a wolf, not a monster. It was a trap. Meryn knew it immediately. If she refused, they'd call her a coward. Proof she couldn't control herself. If she accepted and lost, they'd use it as evidence she was weak. Unfit. And if she won, especially if she won using her power, they'd claim she was too dangerous to live. She's not fighting you. Damien's voice was ice. This isn't a trial. It's a witch hunt. Then she has something to hide. Valen's expression was triumphant. You see? Even her so-called mate knows she can't be trusted. I'll do it. Meryn's words cut through the rising noise. She looked at Stellan, then at Valen, then at the crowd of wolves all watching her with judgment in their eyes. I'll fight. But not because I have to prove anything to you. Because I want you to see that I'm not afraid. That I won't be bullied. Not anymore. Damien grabbed her arm. Meryn, don't. I have to. She met his eyes, willing him to understand. This is the only way to end the doubt. Let me do this. She saw the conflict in his expression. The desperate need to protect her warring with the knowledge that she was right. Finally, reluctantly, he nodded. If he hurts her, Damien's warning was directed at Valen. If anyone interferes, no one will interfere, Valen assured him. This will be a fair fight. Witnessed by all. The crowd parted, forming a circle in the center of the hall. Stellan stepped into it, already beginning to shift. His bones cracked. His body reshaped. Within seconds, a massive gray wolf stood where the man had been. He was easily twice Meryn's size when she was in wolf form. Battle-scarred. Powerful. She was supposed to be afraid. Instead, she felt calm settle over her like a cloak. She'd survived 7 months of torture. She'd faced the darkness inside herself and come out whole. One alpha wolf was nothing compared to that. Meryn shifted. The transformation came easier now. Smoother. Her white fur gleamed in the light streaming through the hall's windows. Her silver eyes locked on Stellan. She was smaller, yes. But she'd learned something in that temple. Something the old texts had taught her. Power wasn't about size. It was about purpose. Stellan lunged without warning. Fast. Brutal. Aiming to end this quickly. To show the pack how easily he could dominate the moon-marked wolf. Meryn dodged. Barely. His jaws snapped closed where her throat had been a heartbeat before. She pivoted, using her smaller size to slip beneath his guard. Her teeth found his leg, not deep enough to maim, just enough to sting. To prove she could hurt him. Stellan snarled and spun, faster than something his size should move. His paw caught her shoulder, sending her skidding across the floor. Pain lanced through her. The crowd cheered. They wanted blood. Wanted to see the moon-marked wolf brought low. She rolled to her feet, feeling her power rise in response to the threat. The sigils on her skin, visible even through her fur, began to glow. No. She forced the power back down. She'd promised to fight without moon magic. She wouldn't break that promise. But Stellan saw the glow. Saw what she was suppressing. And he smiled. Then he cheated. He reached into his belt, still visible where it hung on his wolf form, and pulled something free. A charm. Dark magic rippled from it, and suddenly the air around Maren felt thick. Heavy. Her movements slowed as if she were moving through water. A binding hex. Illegal in sanctioned fights. But no one stopped him. No one called foul. Because they wanted her to lose. Wanted her to break. Wanted any excuse to justify destroying her. Stellan charged again. This time, Maren couldn't dodge fast enough. His weight slammed into her, driving her to the ground. His jaws closed around her throat, not biting down, not yet. Just holding. Proving he could kill her whenever he chose. The crowd roared approval. And in that moment, pinned beneath a wolf who'd cheated, surrounded by a pack that wanted her dead, with Damien's anguished shout barely audible over the noise, Maren understood. This was never about proof. Never about justice. They'd already decided what she was. Monster. Threat. Other. And nothing she did would ever change that. The realization should have broken her. Instead, it freed her. She stopped fighting the power. Stopped trying to be what they wanted. And she let the moon magic rise. Silver light exploded from her body. Stellan was thrown back, the binding hex shattering like glass. Maren stood, her form wreathed in radiance that made the wolves nearest her stumble back, shielding their eyes. You wanted to see what I am? Her voice echoed, human and wolf at once, layered with something ancient. Fine. Look. The sigils on her skin blazed brilliant. The air itself seemed to shimmer. And for just a moment, one perfect, terrifying moment, the pack saw her as she truly was. Not a monster. A force of nature. Power incarnate. The moon goddess's chosen. Then Valen moved. Fast. Too fast. He'd been waiting for this. Waiting for her to reveal herself. His hand came up, and dark magic, real, ancient, forbidden dark magic, lashed out like a whip. It wrapped around Maren's throat, cutting off her air. Cutting off her power. You see. Valen's voice rang out triumphant. She's exactly what we feared. Uncontrollable. Dangerous. She would have killed Stellan. Killed us all if given the chance. No, Maren gasped, but the dark magic tightened. She felt it probing. Felt it searching for the curse marks, for the pathways the council had created. For the weakness. And she realized with horrible clarity, Valen knew about the curse marks because he'd helped create them. He wasn't just calling for Damien's removal. He'd been part of this from the beginning. Uncle. Damien's voice was deadly quiet. Let her go. So you can continue being manipulated? I think not. Valen's expression was cold. Calculating. The pack needs a strong leader. Not one who's been compromised by a moon-marked witch. I'm doing this for your own good, Damien. For all our good. You were part of it. Maren forced the words out past the choking magic. The council, they answered to you. Proof of her instability, Valen said smoothly. Making wild accusations. You see how the curse has damaged her mind. But some wolves in the crowd were looking uncertain now. Looking between Valen and Damien and Maren. Starting to question. Not enough. Not fast enough. Valen's magic contracted, and Maren's vision began to gray at the edges. She heard Damien roar. Heard the sound of fighting. But it seemed distant. Fading. She'd been so close. So close to freedom. To a life. To happiness. And now it was ending in the same place it began, betrayed by wolves who feared what they didn't understand. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was silver light. But this time, it wasn't coming from her. It was coming from the doorway, where 3 figures stood, wreathed in moon magic so pure it made the air sing. The moon spirits. And they looked furious. The moon spirits' presence hit the hall like a physical force. Every wolf, alpha, beta, omega, dropped to their knees. Not from choice. From instinct. From the primal recognition that something far older than their pack, far more powerful than their hierarchy, had just entered the room. Even Valen, for all his dark magic and calculated cruelty, found himself forced down. His binding spell on Marin shattered like spun glass. She gasped, air flooding back into her lungs. The world snapped back into focus, colors too bright, sounds too sharp. Damien was at her side instantly, his hands steadying her as she swayed. "Breathe," he murmured. "Just breathe." She did. In and out. In and out. While the 3 moon spirits drifted into the hall like living starlight. They looked different here than they had at the temple. More solid. More present. And infinitely more dangerous. The one in the center, the tallest, fixed her attention on Valen where he knelt, his expression twisted between fury and terror. "You dare." The spirit's voice wasn't sound. It was feeling. It reverberated through every wolf in the hall, bypassing ears to speak directly to souls. "You dare use our daughter's gift against her. You dare pervert sacred magic for your ambition. You dare harm the one we have chosen." "I was protecting the pack," Valen started. Silence. The command cracked like thunder. Valen's mouth snapped shut, his own voice stolen from him. The spirit turned to address the hall. To address every wolf who'd stood by. Who'd cheered for Marin's defeat. Who'd believed the lies because believing was easier than facing the truth. For 1,000 years, we have watched. We have waited. We have seen packs rise and fall, alphas claim and lose power, territories shift and change. And we have grieved. Grieved for what you have forgotten. For what you have lost. The second spirit drifted forward, her form shifting like moonlight on water. "Once, wolves were our children. Our blessed. We walked among you. Guided you. Taught you to transform not just your bodies, but your spirits. To use the gift of change for healing. For growth. For connection. But over time, you forgot. You turned our gifts into weapons. Our blessings into curses. You built hierarchies of dominance instead of circles of care." The third spirit, smaller, younger somehow, spoke with a voice like wind through leaves. "And when we sent our marked ones, those born with the old connection, the pure channel to our power, you killed them. Every single one. For generations. You called them dangerous. Unstable. Threats. And you destroyed the very thing that could have saved you." Marin felt the words like blows. Every moo-marked wolf before her. Every one. Dead. Murdered by their own packs out of fear. She was alive only because the council had found a use for her first. Until this one. The central spirit's attention returned to Marin. This daughter. Who survived. Who endured. Who chose mercy when she had every right to choose vengeance. "I didn't." Marin's voice was hoarse. "I'm not merciful. I wanted them to hurt. You wanted justice. There is no shame in that." The spirit moved closer, and Marin felt warmth flow from her like summer sun. "But when given the power to destroy, you chose to heal. When given the chance to break your captors, you chose to free yourself instead. That is the difference between vengeance and justice. Between power and wisdom. I don't feel wise." The admission came out broken. "I feel angry. And scared. And so tired of being afraid." "Then be angry." The spirit's smile was fierce. "Proud. Be scared. Be tired. Be all the things they tried to break you for feeling. But do not let their fear become your cage. You are not their sacrifice, daughter. You never were." The words settled into Marin's bones, rewriting something fundamental. She'd spent so long believing she deserved what happened. That she'd been foolish to trust. That being marked made her inherently wrong. But these spirits, these ancient, powerful beings, were telling her the opposite. She was exactly right. Exactly as she was meant to be. The rage that had been building since the moment Valen's magic wrapped around her throat, rage at the betrayal, at the lies, at 7 months of torture and 3 days of fragile peace shattered, it crystallized into something else. Purpose. Marin stood. Damien released her immediately, though she saw the concern in his eyes. She met his gaze, and whatever he saw in her expression made him nod once. Trust. He was giving her trust. She turned to face the hall. Face the wolves still kneeling. Still silent. Still watching with fear and awe and uncertainty written across their faces. You wanted to know what I am, she said, her voice carrying to every corner. So I'll tell you. I'm the wolf your council tortured for 7 months while you went about your lives. I'm the vessel who absorbed every curse, every hex, every piece of dark magic they wanted to hide. I carried your sickness so you could be healthy. Your madness so you could be sane. Your death so you could live. She walked forward, and the crowd parted before her. No one dared meet her eyes. And when I was finally freed, when your Alpha King learned the truth and broke me out of that cell, you didn't thank me. You didn't apologize. You didn't ask how you could make it right. Her voice hardened. You called me a threat. You demanded I prove I wasn't dangerous. You cheered when Stellan tried to break me. And when that wasn't enough, when I refused to be broken, your precious Lord Valen tried to kill me. She stopped in front of Valen, who still couldn't speak. Who could only glare up at her with hatred burning in his eyes. I should hate all of you, she said quietly. I should want every one of you to suffer as I suffered. To feel what it's like to have darkness poured into you until you can't remember what light feels like. To be so alone you forget what your own voice sounds like. The hall was utterly silent. Even breathing seemed to have stopped. But I don't. The words surprised her as much as them. Because I understand now. You're not evil. You're just afraid. Afraid of change. Afraid of power you can't control. Afraid that if someone like me exists, it means everything you've built, all your hierarchies and rules and comfortable lies, might not matter as much as you thought. She felt the moon's spirits behind her, their approval like warm light on her back. So here's what's going to happen. Marin's voice strengthened. The council members who tortured me will face trial. Public. Transparent. Every wolf in this pack will hear what they did. And Lord Valen, she looked down at him, will join them. Because he wasn't just complicit. He orchestrated it. Valen's eyes widened. He shook his head frantically, still unable to speak. Oh yes. Marin smiled, and it wasn't kind. I felt your magic. Recognized it. You weren't just covering for the council. You were using my power. Siphoning it for yourself. That's how you've stayed so strong despite your age. That's how you've gathered so many loyal wolves. You've been feeding off me like a parasite. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Wolves turned to look at Valen with new eyes. With dawning horror and disgust. And when Damien got too close to the truth, when he started asking questions, you tried to remove him. Used me as the excuse. Turned the pack against him so you could take the throne. She crouched down, meeting Valen's gaze. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? I've had nothing but time to feel every curse, every connection, every thread of magic that's been woven through my body. I know exactly who touched me, who used me. And you, Uncle, have been using me since the day they put me in that cell. The moon spirit's voice confirmed it. This one speaks truth. The Alpha called Valen has been stealing her transformed power. Building his strength. Planning his coup. He would have killed both his nephew and our daughter once he secured the throne. The hall erupted. Shouts of outrage. Wolves surging to their feet, some moving toward Valen with violence in their eyes. Others calling for Damien. For justice. For blood. Enough. Damien's alpha command rang out, and the chaos stilled. He moved through the crowd to stand beside Marin, his presence solid and sure. Valen will be tried with the others. But we will not descend into mob rule. We are better than that. We have to be better than that. He looked at Marin, and she saw the question in his eyes. Saw him asking if she was all right. If she needed him to stop this. To take over. She shook her head slightly. Not yet. She wasn't finished. I'm going to offer you all a choice, Marin said, addressing the pack again. I could leave. Take my power and go somewhere far from here, where you'd never have to look at me and remember what was done. That's probably what you want. What would make you most comfortable? She felt the moon's spirit's attention sharpen. Felt Damien tense beside her. But I'm not going to do that. Because running away, hiding, that's what got me into that cell in the first place. I try to be small, harmless, acceptable, and it nearly destroyed me. She straightened, letting the silver light seep from her skin, letting them see her power in all its glory. So instead, I'm staying. I'm going to help Damien rebuild this pack into something better. Something that doesn't sacrifice its most vulnerable members for the comfort of the strong. And you're going to have to decide if you can accept that. Accept a moon-marked wolf? Talia spoke up, her voice wavering. Live alongside someone with that much power? How can we trust? You can't. Marin's answer was blunt. Trust isn't given. It's earned. So I'm going to earn it. Every day. By healing your sick. By protecting your vulnerable. By teaching any other moon-marked wolves who might be born how to control their gifts instead of fear them. And maybe, eventually, you'll look at me and see something other than a threat. And if we refuse? Someone called from the back. If we say you're not welcome here? Marin felt the rage flicker again. But beneath it, something steadier. Calmer. Then I'll still stay, she said simply. Because this is my home too. I was born here. I bled here. And I earned the right to exist here through 7 months of suffering none of you could have survived. So no, you don't get to vote me out. You don't get to decide if I'm worthy. I'm here. I'm staying. And you're going to have to learn to live with it. The moon spirits hummed with approval. The central one drifted forward until she was beside Marin, translucent hand resting on her shoulder. This is our daughter's choice. And we support it. Know this, children of the pack, she carries our blessing. Our protection. Any who seek to harm her will answer to us. And we are not as merciful as she is. The threat hung in the air, unmistakable. The wolves who'd been muttering fell silent. Even the most aggressive, the ones who'd cheered loudest for Marin's defeat, seemed to understand that this was no longer negotiable. The moon-marked wolf was staying, and the moon itself would ensure her safety. One more thing. The spirit's voice softened. Daughter, you have carried our gift with grace and courage. But you need not carry it alone. You have found your anchor. She gestured to Damien. But there are others who would stand with you. Other marked ones, scattered across territories. Hidden. Afraid. Alone. Find them. Gather them. Show them they are not monsters. Build what was broken. A new pack. Marin breathed. Of moon-marked wolves? Not separate. Integrated. A circle within the larger pack. Balance between old and new. Between power and wisdom. Between strength and compassion. The spirit smiled. You will be their alpha. Their guide. Just as he glanced at Damien. Is king of wolves. You will be queen of moon. The title settled over Marin like a mantle. Heavy. Terrifying. Perfect. She looked at Damien, saw wonder and pride and something deeper in his expression. He went to one knee before her, right there in front of the entire pack. My queen, he said simply. My mate. My equal. Tears burned Marin's eyes. But these were different from the ones she'd shed in that cell. These were tears of relief. Of recognition. Of finally being seen as something other than a vessel or a weapon or a threat. She was seen as herself. She reached down, took his hand, and pulled him to his feet. My king, she replied softly. My anchor. My choice. Around them, slowly, wolves began to kneel. Not from fear this time. From respect. From acknowledgement. It wasn't everyone. She could see wolves in the back still standing, still uncertain, still resistant. But it was enough. It was a beginning. The moon's spirits began to fade, their work complete. But before they vanished entirely, the central ones spoke once more. Remember, daughter, transformation is not painless. But it is necessary. And you, all of you, her gaze swept the hall, are being transformed. Whether you resist or embrace it is your choice. But the change is coming. The old ways are ending. And something new, something better, is being born. Then they were gone, leaving only the faint scent of moonflowers and frost. Marin stood in the center of the hall, hand clasped with Damien's, and looked at the pack that had tried to break her. The pack she'd chosen to save anyway. So, she said, her voice steady despite everything. Who's ready to start building something better? And in the silence that followed, one voice called out. Then another. Then another. I am. Not everyone. Not yet. But enough. Always, always enough. 6 months later, the world looked different. The temple in the northern forest had been rebuilt. Not as a ruin, not as a hiding place, but as a sanctuary. A place where moon-marked wolves could come without fear. Where they could learn to control their gifts instead of suppress them. Where they could be seen as blessed instead of cursed. Marin stood on the temple steps, watching the sun set over the forest. She wasn't alone anymore. Never alone. 3 young moon-marked wolves trained in the clearing below, 2 girls and a boy, all of them rescued from packs that had been preparing to contain them. To repeat the cycle. But Damien's network of loyal wolves had found them first. Brought them here. Given them a choice. And they'd chosen to stay. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Familiar. Warm. Damien's arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. You're thinking too loud, he murmured against her ear. I'm thinking about how close I came to never having this. She leaned into him, into the solid comfort of his presence. If you hadn't come down to that cell. If you'd just passed judgment the way they wanted. But I didn't. His grip tightened. And you're here. We're here. Building something that should have existed centuries ago. She turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd chosen her when the world said she was worthless. The king who'd risked everything to save someone he didn't know. The mate who stood beside her through every nightmare, every doubt, every moment she'd wanted to give up. The council's trial ends tomorrow, she said quietly. The pack will vote on their sentence. I know. His expression was grave. Whatever they decide, it won't be enough. Nothing could be enough for what was done to you. It doesn't need to be enough. Marin had made peace with that months ago. It just needs to be public. Witnessed. So that anyone who thinks about doing something similar knows there will be consequences. Valen had already been sentenced. Exiled to the wastelands, stripped of his name and power. Some said it was too merciful. Others said it was a fate worse than death, being nobody, having nothing after a lifetime of ambition. Marin didn't care either way. He was gone. That was what mattered. The other packs are watching, Damien said. What we're building here, word is spreading. Some alphas are curious. Others are terrified. A few have already started hunting their own moon-marked wolves, trying to eliminate them before they can become threats. Marin's jaw tightened. Then we find them faster. We save them. We show them there's another way. His smile was soft. Proud. When did you start thinking like a queen? When I realized that surviving wasn't enough. That if I have this power, this blessing, I have a responsibility to use it. To protect the ones who come after me. She glanced back at the young wolves in the clearing. They deserve better than what I got. They all do. You're going to change the world. It wasn't a question. Just certainty. We're going to change the world, she corrected. Together. Like you promised. He pulled her closer, and she went willingly. Let herself be held by the man who'd seen her at her worst and chosen to stay. Who'd shared her darkness and helped her transform it into light. Who'd proven that not all alphas were cruel. That not all power corrupted. That love, real love, could exist even in the darkest places. I love you, she said against his chest. The words still felt new. Precious. She'd never thought she'd have the chance to say them to anyone. I love you too, my fierce moon queen. He tipped her chin up, and his kiss was gentle, reverent, full of promise. Always. No matter what comes. Below, in the capital, wolves gathered for the final day of the trial. Some came seeking justice. Others came hoping for mercy. And a few, a dangerous few, came plotting how to undermine everything Marin and Damien were building. How to return to the old ways. The comfortable ways. The ways where power stayed with the powerful and the vulnerable were sacrificed without question. But those wolves didn't know what Marin had learned in that cell. That the things which nearly break you can also make you unbreakable. That darkness faced and transformed becomes the brightest light. That a wolf who survives 7 months of hell and comes out choosing mercy over vengeance, that wolf is far more dangerous than any monster they'd imagined. In distant territories, other moon-marked wolves felt the shift. Felt something calling to them. Whispering that they weren't alone anymore. That somewhere, a place existed where they could be safe. Could be themselves. Could be powerful without being feared. And slowly, carefully, they began to move. Began to travel toward the northern forests. Toward the temple that glowed silver in the moonlight. Toward the queen who'd survived and the king who'd chosen her and the sanctuary they were building together. The world was changing. Some would resist. Some would fight. Some would cling to the old ways with desperate fury. But change was inevitable. The moon had spoken. And her daughters were rising. Marin stood on those temple steps, wrapped in Damien's arms, and looked out at the forest that had once been her prison. The pack that had once been her torturers. The power that had once been her curse. And she smiled. Because she'd learned the most important truth of all. She was never the monster they feared. She was the reckoning they deserved. And she was just getting started. Would you have chosen her side? Or would fear have made you stand with the crowd? Would you have looked at a wolf marked by the moon and seen blessing or threat? Would you have been brave enough to question what everyone else accepted as truth? These aren't easy questions. But they're necessary ones. Because in every pack, in every community, in every group of people, there are wolves like Marin. Different. Powerful. Scared. Waiting to see if anyone will choose them over comfort. Will choose truth over convenient lies. And there are wolves like Damien. Who have the power to look away, but choose to look closer instead. This story isn't just about werewolves and magic. It's about what we do when faced with someone who's been broken by the world. Do we add to their suffering? Do we ignore it? Or do we reach down into the darkness and help them climb back into the light? Marin spent 7 months in a cell built by fear. But she spent the rest of her life building sanctuaries out of courage. Which will you build? If this story awakens something in you, if it made you feel seen, or angry, or hopeful, or all three at once, then you belong here. At Shayla's Romance Library, we tell stories about wolves who refuse to stay broken. About mates who choose each other against impossible odds. About power that heals instead of harms. We tell stories that burn. Stories that transform. Stories that remind you that being different isn't the same as being wrong. So if you're ready for more tales of fierce queens and devoted kings, of magic that costs everything and love that's worth the price, of darkness transformed into light, subscribe to Shayla's Romance Library. Because the moon is rising, and her daughters are calling. Will you answer? This is Marin's story. But it's also yours. Every time you choose courage over fear. Every time you stand with the broken instead of the comfortable. Every time you look at someone the world calls too much and say you're exactly enough. That's when you become moon-marked too. That's when you transform the world. One choice at a time. Welcome to the pack.